Hi, everyone. Welcome to Tending Habits with Sabrina Joy. I am Sabrina Joy. I will be your presenter for today. Thanks for joining me, and we're going to jump right on in and get started. Wanted to quickly go over what you can expect in today's webinar. The session should last about 45 minutes to an hour, give or take, depending on how many questions we have. Please feel free to add any questions that you might have in the question and answer box. I'll be answering them towards the end, but don't want you to feel like you've got to wait until the end. If you think of something, just go ahead and put that in the question and answer. My goal for tonight is that you walk away with a solid understanding of the first three steps to leveraging the power of habit in your life. But first, let me tell you a little bit more about myself and a little bit more about my why. As I mentioned, my name is Sabrina. I'm based in Dallas, Texas. Professionally have spent most of my career in the airline industry before transitioning to the nonprofit space a few years ago. And most relevant for tonight, of course, I am also a habit coach. So I help individuals and organizations leverage the power of habit. And often when I tell people that I am a habit coach, people are often a little bit perplexed, and they ask, "Oh, that's kind of interesting. I haven't heard much about that, and how did you get into it?" And honestly, it's really not a straightforward answer, but in a lot of ways goes back all the way back to childhood. I grew up in the era of the Oprah Winfrey Show. One of my mother and I's daily habits during the weekday after school and after she got home from work was to watch the show. We did it faithfully. And interestingly enough, when I look back on it and the episodes that stand out the most to me today, and honestly, the ones that even, as a kid were the ones that piqued my interest the most, often weren't the ones or the shows with celebrities or artists or anything like that. It was those live your best life episodes that provided so much information about how to do life better and how you could kind of control and kind of manage, which way your life went based on the things that you did. I was always fascinated by that. And obviously, as a kid, a lot of the information that was shared on those kinds of shows didn't necessarily apply to me at that time, at that age, but I always knew that as I got into adulthood that they would. So I would, mentally file those, some of those things away that I couldn't apply to my life then, because I knew it would prove helpful. And then as a kid in school, and that picture on the left as an example of that awkward time period. But I always remember being really excited when a speaker would come to the school to address the student body. I was always fascinated about how they would walk into that auditorium and kind of command the stage, the way that they would put their words and their presentation together. And again, the nuggets that they would share about the things that they did in their lives that got them to the point that they were at then, that kind of had them be someone that the school would invite to come to speak to us. So I would hang on their every word and glean whatever nuggets I could about life. Always. I was always excited for those days. And then I was an athlete. I played basketball and ran track all through middle and high school. Ran track in college as well at Florida A&M University. But the through line, through all of that is a combination of three things: self-improvement, motivational speaking, and daily practice, like this daily or consistent grind to get better and to do better. And all of that kind of culminated, once I learned more about habit and read The Power of Habit, and now, probably 10 other books on habit, all led me to my passion of habit coaching. Enough about me, though. As I said in the beginning, what I really want to share with you tonight are the first few initial steps to leveraging the power of habit, so that you can kind of, after tonight, get started on your journey of assessing where you are in your habit life, and making the necessary adjustments if you feel like those are needed, to elevate yourself in that area. But the first important step is appreciating the power of habit. Really having an understanding of the role habit plays in our life and how important that role is. But one of my favorite habit quotes is here: anything that you want to accomplish in life is possible so long as you have the right habits in place, by Charles Duhigg. Charles Duhigg is the author of The Power of Habit. And I find this quote to be so true. And when it says anything, he's not just talking about the big things in life, which I think oftentimes when we see quotes like this, or when we think about even just in general self-improvement and doing better, often we think about, starting a business, writing a book, losing 50 pounds. It's like the big things. But I think, and what I actually know to be true, is that it's not just those quote unquote big things. It's the small things as well. It's the getting to the end of the week feeling like you accomplished what you set out to do for that week, feeling like you showed up well for yourself and for those that you love and for those who rely on you. I actually think that it's these small things that really are the big things in life. But the point here is that there really is no area in our life that can't be improved through habit. Research indicates that almost half of what we do on any given day, we do every day. And when you consider this fact, that such a large portion of our actions, our thoughts, emotions, the things we do, think, and feel every day, often without thought, you begin to realize that our habits and routines really become the underpinning of our lives. In short, the quality of our habits determines or equals the quality of our lives. It's really, in my mind, that big of a deal, and that's why I'm always talking about it. So again, step one is really understanding and appreciating the power of habit. We're going to move on to step two now, which is understanding how habits work. So it's one thing to know, hey, habits are a big deal and it's something I need to be paying attention to. But if you don't understand a thing, it's hard to kind of know how to manage a thing, right? This is the habit loop. It's a diagram of the habit loop. And as you can see, it's quite simple. It's got 3 components. But of course, we know that it is powerful. And all habits, without exception, follow this loop and include these 3 components. The first one is the cue or the trigger. This is what kind of sets off the habit. The most common triggers are time and location, but obviously there are other triggers that come into play as well. Then there's the routine, or the habit itself. And again, these aren't just actions. A lot of times we think of habits as actions. What do we do? What do we eat? Things like that. But it's also our thoughts, our self-talk, our emotions. Those are habitual as well. And then the payoff or the reward. And remember, I said that all of these components, all 3 components exist in every single habit, no matter if it's a bad habit or a good habit, there's always a payoff. And then there's craving. Craving is what drives this loop, particularly as a habit is really, really ingrained. And it's really what can make a habit, particularly a bad habit, so powerful and so hard to change. But let me give you a quick example of this. I'm a big fan of bubble tea, and I don't know if you all are familiar with bubble tea. It's kind of this, it's an Asian drink. Commonly it's milk tea, or sometimes it's slushies, and it has these little black tapioca pearls in it. People generally either love it or they're like, what is this? Am I eating something or am I drinking something? I don't like doing both at the same time. I am one of those people that love it. And my favorite bubble tea spot happened to be on my route home from work. And what started out as, a trip that I would make, stop that I would make after work on the way home, maybe once every other week, over time, like habits often do, became something that I did more frequently. And at some point, I realized I was really stopping, maybe 3 or 4 times per week, for this treat. But when I realized that it was truly a habit that was becoming ingrained and I might need to pay attention to it, was when instead of only thinking about bubble tea when the cue showed up, time at the end of the workday, location, heading north on the tollway, I was starting to think about it earlier in the day and starting to think, am I going to, do I have anything I need to, rush off to after work? Once I noticed that craving was showing up before the cue even showed up, which makes it that much harder to pass that exit on the way home because I've been craving it for so long. So now my willpower is down. That's when I knew that I needed to take a look at this habit and do something about it. So that's the habit loop. The craving is that thing that you kind of need to look out for, particularly if you've determined that the habit isn't something that's helpful or serving you well. And certainly the additional calories, the additional few dollars a pop was something that, wasn't the best idea. Of course, there's worse habits, but here's the golden rule of habit. Any habit can be changed if the cue and the reward remain the same. And here's a quick kind of common example of that. Let's just say that you, or maybe it's a friend of yours, and certainly not you, has kind of gotten themselves into a habit of having a glass of wine every evening to wind down. And because you or your friend is also trying to lose weight, they've determined, these extra 200 calories, I could probably do without every day. Well, in this scenario, the cue is the time, evening, location, kind of, at home. And the payoff is that sense of wind down or that moment of relaxation that comes after the glass of wine. The routine of pouring the glass of wine and drinking it can really be replaced with a couple of different things, right? It could be a glass of water. It could be replacing that wine and that slow sip with a slow sip of hot tea. Or something I got from a colleague a while back is pouring kombucha into a wine glass. But that switch has a better chance of sticking. So this new, healthier habit has a better chance of sticking because I didn't try to adjust the cue, which often with time and location is not even something that you can control as much, right? And then that payoff is that thing that feels good at the end that you're craving. So if those two stay the same and you just switch out that habit, it's got a better chance of sticking. Another thing that I find fascinating about habits and how they work is just the fact that they were always meant to serve us. Our brains evolved over time to be able to chunk together like tasks so that we could process through them more quickly. And if you think about that, and what life would be like that if our brains didn't do that. So think about, you wake up in the morning and, now we don't even think about probably the first 10 actions that we take when we wake up. We get out of the bed, we throw on a robe or some house shoes, whatever our routine is, use the bathroom, brush our teeth, wash our face, start the coffee pot, all of those things. When is the last time that you had to actively think about those steps? They just kind of happen automatically, right? That's why in the morning, as when you're going through this routine, you're not even really actively thinking about what you're doing, but you remember, oh, I've got an important meeting at 11, or I've got, something that I need to be prepared for, even after work. Because your brain is automatically processing through those habitual tasks, it frees up energy to be able to have higher level thinking, come up with ideas and things like that. So they were always meant to serve us in that way. Otherwise, we would never get the big things done because we'd be completely worn out with all the menial tasks that we're doing every day. But while the brain is a powerful organ, it's important to remember that it cannot tell the difference between a good habit or a helpful one. And that's why it's so important and so critical to be intentional about the habits that we do have in place, to assess them and to take inventory and determine whether or not they're helping us reach our goals and live the life that we want to live, or if they're holding us back, and then adjusting them accordingly. All right. So again, step one was appreciating the power of habit. The second step was understanding how habits work. The third step, which is my favorite, is knowing yourself. And I really can't stress the importance of this step enough. This is really where the rubber meets the road. It's one thing to get it and understand how impactful they can be. It's one thing to intellectually understand how they work. It's a whole other ballgame when you know yourself well, know how you're wired, know your tendencies and your personality traits and all of those things, because only then can you match up the right strategy to how you're naturally wired and give yourself the best shot of hitting that sweet spot of what's going to work for you. So, knowing yourself truly is the beginning of all wisdom. Wanted to go through the four tendencies, which is a framework that Gretchen Rubin developed. Gretchen Rubin is the author of The Happiness Project, that you may have heard of, and the book Better Than Before, which kind of, she describes her foray into looking at her habits and understanding how to adjust and what things she could do to improve her life through habit. But this framework really kind of categorizes the general ways that people respond to expectation. So I'll just run through these with you. An upholder is someone who easily meets both outer and inner expectations. So these are your friends or your colleagues that if their boss tells them that there's something that they need to do and it needs to be turned in, the next week or the next quarter or what have you, they really don't struggle to meet that deadline or to meet that expectation. They also are the ones that, without much fanfare, all of a sudden, they'll one day come into the office and say, "Oh, I wrote a book," or "I lost 40 pounds," which you probably would have noticed over time. But it's something that they don't necessarily have to talk about because they, for themselves, set it up as a goal and then they achieved it. No big deal. An obliger is someone who easily meets outer expectations, but struggles to meet inner expectations. And obligers is kind of the largest category of people. These are the people that, whether it's a work commitment or they've made a commitment to a friend, they'll do what they said that they were going to do. But if they have a personal goal for themselves that they haven't been, particularly if they haven't been very public about it, they will struggle to meet those expectations. And then a questioner, as you might have guessed, is someone who struggles to meet inner and outer expectations until they've asked all their questions and they've determined that the expectation makes sense. And then our rebels, they struggle to meet both inner and outer expectations. They really just do not like to be put upon or contained or in a box or anything. A couple of examples. So I am an obliger. I'm definitely an obliger. So outer expectations is really key for me. And often, in addition to, the other strategies I use for myself personally, often sharing my goals with someone else will create the perception of outer expectations that sometimes is helpful for me achieving my goals. And note that I said perceived outer expectations. And this is what that can kind of look like, just a very small example. Let's say I've signed up for a marathon and I'm training for it, which means, a long run every Saturday. And sometimes what I will do, if I know I'm not going to feel like I'm, running all these miles on Saturday, I might put it out there to a friend. I might post it on social media, looking forward to running 12 miles tomorrow. And mind you, no matter if someone comments or likes the post or whatever, Saturday morning, no one who saw that post is thinking or wondering whether or not I got up and ran those 12 miles, right? But for me, this perception that there may be someone out there that saw that post and is going to be wondering whether or not I got my training run in might be the thing that helps make sure I get out of bed and get that training in. And then another example, my daughter, she's a rebel, which is, as a parent, is fun to deal with. But for her, and she's a college athlete, so she's got, in addition to, being very serious about her academics. So whenever you've got big goals, you've got to be disciplined, and there's certain things that you have to do. But for her, what's important for her to know about herself in terms of being a rebel is being able to know when she's trying, she's going against that expectation, because it's just her kind of rebellious personality trait or tendency that's making her rebel, and also giving herself some leeway in terms of the how. So that's a strategy that a lot of rebels will use, is they'll kind of know what they need to do and know the goal, but they give themselves a little bit of flexibility on the how, which gives them that feeling like they're doing this on their own will, and not because someone's kind of forcing them to. The Enneagram is another really, really helpful tool. It's a personality typing system that describes patterns and how people interpret the world and manage their emotions. And I like it because it's super, super detailed. So, there could be an entire webinar for a couple of hours just on the Enneagram. It's very detailed and very nuanced. Each number has its own set of strengths and weaknesses. And again, like all of these things, the idea is not to strive to be one number over the other or one tendency over the other. It's simply to understand your number and the common strengths and things to look out for, so that when they show up, you can identify it. A quick example I'll pick out. It's easy to use myself as the example. I am a true type 6. And one of the things that we have to look out for is the tendency to overplan for contingencies. Because security is really important to us. Identifying every single scenario that could go wrong gives us that sense of security. But sometimes we will focus too heavily on coming up with all these contingency plans, and it will prevent us from taking action. So knowing that about ourselves helps us to identify it. So it's not changing who we are that we think about contingency plans. In a lot of scenarios, that's very helpful. But also knowing that we are inclined to do that helps us identify when it's happening to the point that's preventing us from doing something that we know we need to do. And then in addition to kind of the formal, personality typing, there's other just general personality traits to consider and think about as well. I put a few of them here. One is the sprinter versus the marathoner, and this is kind of the difference between people that really like quick starts, that if there's a long-term project, like a year-long project, let's say, for them, they really have to develop and create almost mini projects within that to stay on task and to stay motivated. So they're doing quick spurts, they're getting quick results, and that really keeps them motivated month to month, so that at the end of the year, they've accomplished that long-term goal. Whereas a marathoner, by nature, they're okay with plugging along little by little over time. They don't need to kind of create this scenario or this environment where they've got these short sprints happening. So they can plug along and at the end of the year have an end result and be perfectly fine, fine with it. That end goal that might be far off in the future is enough to keep them motivated and to keep them engaged. And then another one that I love to talk about, because for me, when I figured out which side of the fence I was on, was a game changer for me, a true aha moment, is the difference between an abstainer and a moderator. A moderator is someone that moderates well. These are the people that can have a little bit of dark chocolate every night, just a little bit. They don't overindulge. They don't have the whole candy bar or the whole pint of ice cream. They just have a little bit, um, and that gets that addresses their sweet tooth for the night, doesn't ruin their diet or their goals, their weight loss goals, and they're good. And then you have those of us that are abstainers, that when it comes to temptation, it's really and a lot of times an all or nothing. That's just how we're bent. We can't have the little piece of chocolate or the small piece of cake. I always say I either have no cake or I have all the cake. It's very hard for me to do that in between. And when I realized that about myself, boy, was that freeing, right? I, in my mind, I had set this goal, and you hear all the time, moderation is key, everything in moderation. Often moderation is fine. Often moderation keeps us sane. No argument there. But for some things, for some people, moderation isn't helpful, or it's not easy. And let's face it, as human beings, we're always going to gear ourselves towards what's easiest, the path of least resistance. And if that means no cake, no ice cream, or no chocolate while you're working on this goal, then there's nothing wrong with that. That's just how you're wired, and that's fine. Okay, so I have given you, like I mentioned, those first 3 important steps to leveraging the power of habit. I wanted to share and provide you with a little bit of a bonus, just so you can kind of see how all of this fits together. And that's a few examples of the habit strategies. So remember, I talked about the fact that the importance of knowing yourself is so that you can employ the right strategies. And so here are 3 examples of what of some habit strategies. There are many, many, many out there, but these are the 3 that are common and kind of easy to summarize and kind of illustrate this point. The first is the keystone habit, and the keystone habit as a strategy is really just finding what that keystone habit is and then using that to propel you forward. So let me give you the definition here. A keystone habit is a habit that once it's conquered, kind of automatically leads you to establish other healthy habits. You often hear a lot of health and fitness and wellness coaches talk about when they're working with someone, you might think they'd start with, well, what are you eating? Let's change what you're eating. Or they may start with, well, what kind of workouts are you doing? Often, what really helps people is something that is seemingly unrelated. They may focus on just when you wake up, you drink 20 ounces of water a day, every day. And that's all you focus on. But for some people, as they conquer that, they get that small win first thing in the morning that propels them to make a healthier breakfast choice. And on and on and on. And so often the keystone habit may feel like it's not really connected or tied to the end goal, at least not in the way that you might think is the most impactful, but it's the power of that habit, like a domino, bringing other habits along with it that can make a big difference. And then another habit strategy that I really like and I find useful is habit stacking. That is taking a set of habits that's already kind of ingrained and settled and ready to go, and inserting a new habit within that stack, right? So this, for me, really helped when I was trying to figure out this daily multivitamin habit. For whatever reason, I had the hardest time taking my vitamins every day. Something that seems so simple, but for me was just challenging. I tried everything, leave it out on the counter in the kitchen. Maybe I should take it at night versus taking it in the morning. What did it for me was inserting that habit into my morning routine that was already very established. So I wake up and I go into the bathroom. First thing I do is drink a lot of water. Well, if I'm already doing that and that is already an ingrained habit, why not have my vitamins right there and take my vitamin as I'm drinking the water and then moving on to the next thing in the morning routine? Once I figured that out, which seems really simple, seems like something I would have thought of years ago. But often that's how these habit plans and these habit strategies work. It's not necessarily rocket science, right? It's just matching up strategy, how I'm bent, creating the scenario, creating the environment where these healthy habits can flourish. Clean slate is the last one I'll go over here. And that's really leveraging the power of a clean slate, whether that's the beginning of the week, leveraging, being able to start something on a Monday, you're starting a fresh week, fresh month, fresh year. I always, I've always been a New Year's resolution kind of person. And I know, there's folks out there, the New Year's resolution haters that are like, and these are probably a lot of the rebels out there, that it's just another day, why focus so much on New Year's resolutions? Most people don't even stick to them anyway. Data shows that in large part that's true. But for some people, that fresh start to a year can be a great motivator. Will it on its own get you to where you need to be, or kind of make that habit easy to implement? No, none of these strategies work in isolation. You need a few different things, right? And then sometimes you tweak, so you have to tend to these habits. It's not if it was that easy, we'd all be, exactly where we want it to be in life all the time. But it could be it could be a powerful tool in your toolkit for managing habits and kind of getting yourself. So obviously with the new year upon us, and I know we're all looking forward to a 2021 that is in a lot of ways different than our 2020. That's a clean slate. That is something that you can absolutely use to help propel you forward for next year. So don't shy away from that. It's an absolutely valid habit strategy. So those are the 3 steps. Those are a little bit about strategies and kind of how it all fits together. Where do you go from here? What now? How can you dig in a little bit deeper into some of this information? And how can you create your own strategic plan, your own plan forward for, addressing your habit life for next year? I've developed a 3-month course. It's Tending Habits School. It launches in January. And I've developed a curriculum to really dig deep into all of these steps and personalize it for you. So really walking through some of these personality frameworks, understanding where you sit on those and what that means, picking out those habit strategies that will work best for you and kind of coming up with a plan around that. And then how do we tend to those habits over time? And then obviously a little bit of encouragement and cheerleading and coaching, as you get those habits ingrained as well. So you can find out more information at tendinghabits.com/school to learn more about that. So I know, this may have seemed like a lot. I did try to kind of get a lot of information in a short amount of time. And for some people, you might be thinking, wow, this is a lot. This is a lot of effort and a lot of stuff around habit. Does it really matter that much? And if you're thinking that, I just want to share with you a little bit about my philosophy about the average Tuesday and how important I think it is. Oftentimes, and I think, too often, we focus on the big events in our lives, the big projects, the big assignments, and we show up well for those things because, we rally ourselves and we get ourselves ready, and we're ready to show up, and we're ready to tackle the day and tackle the moment, seize the moment. But I think when it's all said and done, and when we're looking back over our lives, what we will remember as the overall summary of our life aren't those big things. It's going to be the things that happen in between those big things. It's going to be the average Tuesday. That is truly where we spend most of our time. That determines how healthy our relationships are with ourselves and others. how well we parent, how well we love and care for our spouses and partners. In the end, it will be the things that we consistently do on the average Tuesday of our lives that will matter most. And that's truly why I believe so passionately about habit and about making sure that the things that we are doing day in and day out without much thought are the things that will serve us best in our lives. So just wanted to take a minute, and before I sign off, certainly want to thank you for joining me. I hope you found some of this information helpful. I am going to see, check our questions and our question and answer, and certainly if you've got some questions, go ahead and add them there as well. So one question that I see here from Cheryl was on the personality trait. There was a image of a butterfly and then a window, and I don't think I described what that was. So that's another personality trait, an example of people that are collectors and people that that like scarcity. And for some people like that sit on that collector side of the fence, those are the folks that when they get excited about a new project or a new endeavor, they collect and buy all the things, right? If it's at work and it's a project that you're working on, they're collecting all the tasks, all the things, all the objectives, all the people that are participating, all the departments that are involved. Or in your personal life, let's say you're decided you're going to start a blog, or you want to start developing some content for a book. You might buy all the pens and all the journals, all the things. And you can get yourself too focused on collecting those things and less focused on what you need to do to accomplish the ultimate goal. So that's what those things are. Thank you for that, Cheryl. And then another question I see here is just a little more information about Habit School and what that looks like. So for Habit School, the folks that are going to go through that course, they will have 7 video coaching sessions. There'll be group coaching sessions where we will each session spend time on one component. For the first few sessions, it will be going through a lot of those personality typing, understanding, some assessing kind of yourself and personality traits. We'll spend some time understanding what your goals are. We'll take inventory of your current habit life. We'll do some tracking, some time tracking to see where you're spending your time during the day. And then the middle portion, we'll actually start putting together that plan for yourself based on that. And then in the last portion, we're working the plan. We're tending where we need to do. I'm there along with you, not only cheering you on, but kind of giving you some perspective and some thoughts about maybe, if we're not getting a good start on a certain area where we may need to adjust. In addition to those group sessions, there's also 3 kind of independent phone or email check-ins with me personally. There's also a workbook that we'll use. So it's some good stuff. I think it's a solid curriculum, and certainly will help you get started to a great 2021. Let's see. So another question here, thank you for that, is whether or not I am accepting one-on-one clients at the time. And I do have a fairly small set of openings for that, only because I am working on this Habit School and kind of getting ready to show up well for that class. But I do have some space for a few private clients as well. So feel free to reach out to me. Email is sabrinajoy@tendinghabits.com, and we can chat about your needs there. Awesome. I think that covered all of the questions, so we will end it there. Thank you so much for joining. It was a pleasure.